Eicha Tifarti Miroshosai Shlichu Tiferes Tiferes that is referred to is when the Rebbeinu Shalom's tefillin were cast off. The Rebbeinu Shalom's tefillin are Mika Amcha Yisrael Goyechot Ba'aretz. Those are the Tiferes. This Kinna we speak about tefillin Hashmishay Kedushah. Tefillin are the chibur between Klal Yisrael and the Ribono Shel Olam. We tie Ticha Be Av, the Ribono Shel Olam, on our arm and our head, and he ties us to him. And those Tashmishay Kedushah were diminished because of the Churban. We'll speak a little bit about the Kedushah, Tashmishay Kedushah, Sefer Torah, Tefillah, and Mezuzah. Kedushah Sefer Torah. Sefer Torah has to have a kesher to Klal Yisrael. I'd like to explain the Zohar that says Yesh Shishim Ribui Osios La Torah is Rashi Tevos Yisrael. Usually understood simply that there are 600,000 letters in the Torah corresponding to the 600,000 root neshamas of Klal Yisrael. Every Jew has a letter in the Torah. There's only one big problem. There aren't 600,000 letters in the Torah. You told me it's a gematria, plus or minus 1 or 2, doesn't make that much of a difference. But there are only 304,855 letters in the Torah. That's almost half missing from 600,000. The Bnei Yoshua and Kedushin speaks about this kasha, and there are about 11 terutzim that I'm familiar with how to answer the question. Amongst them, that you have to include the Targum, that also is part of the Torah was given on Sinai. Others say that every letter is made up of many letters. Others say that the spaces between the letters are also considered like letters. But Ladias Daiti, there's no question. There's no kasha, you don't need any teretz. The kasha would only be if it said, Yesh Shishim Ribui Osios Ba Torah. There's 600,000 letters in the Torah. It doesn't say that. It can't say that. Because then it wouldn't spell Yisrael. It would spell Yisrael. In order to spell Yisrael, it has to be Yesh Shishim Ribui Osios La Torah, which I think echoes another Zohar. The Zohar says, Yisrael v'yoraisa v'kudsha b'richu chadu. Ribono Shel Olam and the Torah and Klal Yisrael are all one. That means that the Torah is not complete with 304,000 letters. But in order for that Torah of written letters to be complete, it has to be mechuber to Klal Yisrael. You need another 600,000 letters added to the Torah to make the Torah complete. Yesh Shishim Ribui Osios La Torah. And that Torah that's written with 304,000 letters, you have to add another 600,000 letters. And those are the neshamas of Klal Yisrael, and then the Torah is complete. Because Yisrael v'yoraisa chadu. So the Torah is not something separate from Klal Yisrael. It is part and parcel of Klal Yisrael, and that is the tachlis of Torah. Kama tipshoi sharinshi, the Gemara says in Makos. People are foolish. The kami nikre Sefer Torah, v'lo kami mikne kavarabba. They stand up for a dead Sefer Torah. It's written with dead ink on dead parchment, locked in an Aron Kodesh. And the purpose of that Torah is to be mischader to a Yid, to make him a living Sefer Torah. And people don't stand up for the living Sefer Torah. Tipshus. That, I think, was the mistake of David HaMelech. David was punished because he said, Zmiros hoyu li chukecha. The onus was that Uzzah made a mistake and went out to support the Torah that was falling, the Aram, and he was killed, and it marred the simcha of Achnosus, the Aram. The Torah calls itself Ashira. Kisvu lochemes Ashira azos, according to many Rishonim, Shira refers to the Torah. Kol HaTorah Kula is called a Shira. So where was David HaMelech's mistake? I think the difference is, there's a very big difference between Zmira and Shira. Shira comes from the Yesod of Yosher. A Shira is the essence, represents the essence of a person's Metzias. His essence. It's an expression of one's essence. That's why Perek Shira. Everything in the Bria says a Shira. Shira means it expresses its essence. That's the Shira of everything. Shira is Yosher, from the essence of a person. Zmira, on the other hand, comes from the word Losizmor, to prune. It's an outside influence. You cut away some of the weaker branches to give the tree the incentive to grow. It is a catalyst. It helps to make the tree put its kochos into the branches that are there and not the extraneous branches. It's an external incentive. Torah is a shira. It's the essence. It's not a zimra. It's not a zmira. It's not just an external, something external, a power that helps to generate inspiration from the outside. David HaMelech gave the impression that Torah is just zmiros, not a shira. That was the problem. You could separate the Torah from the person. And therefore his mistake was that he put the Aram on a wagon instead of Bakosif Iso, which represents the fact that you can't separate the Torah from a person. But he separated it. Torah's over here, I'm over here. It's two separate things. And once you think that the Torah doesn't support you, it's not your life, then you begin to think you support the Torah. And you make the mistake that Uzzah did. That was the Midah Keneged Midah. Torah is the Shira of Klal Yisrael. It's the essence of our life. You can't separate the Torah from the person. They go together. We are supposed to be a Sefer Torah Chai. Beautiful story. Woman brought her Kohl family, who was renting an apartment from a person. She brought her rent check, and the man apologized. I know your husband is learning in Kohl that's probably very hard for you to come up with the rent money each month. I wish I didn't have to charge you so much, but I have no choice. Don't worry, Mrs. Bauman assured him. You're charging a fair price and you're entitled to do that. I want to explain to you the reason why I need to charge you the full price, he continued. As you know, I have only one son, and unfortunately none of his children are frum. Although I visit my grandchildren often and I love them dearly, I know that they will not be a continuation for me after I leave this world. Pointing to the Bauman's apartment upstairs, Reb Micha continued, when I realized that my grandchildren were not going to carry on my legacy, I divided my apartment in half so that I could rent out the top floor. Every month I take the rent money you give me and deposit it into a special envelope. I'm saving money to hire a sofer who will write a Sefer Torah for me. The Torah will be the legacy that I leave over in this world. A few years later, music blasted over the outdoor loudspeakers as Mrs. Bauman urged her two sons to join the line of young boys marching in neat columns, holding lit torches in their hands. Spirited dancing as they made their way to the neighborhood shul. Under the chuppah stood a beaming Reb Micha. Tears streamed from his eyes as he clutched his precious Sefer Torah close to his heart. Now he knew for certain that his legacy would be preserved. That is the Sefer Torah. The Sefer Torah is the legacy of every Yid. Toldoseim shel tzadikim is ma'aseim hatovim. How much we connect ourselves to the Sefer Torah, that is our legacy. That's the Sefer Torah. Tefillin. Tefillin is a sign that we have a kesher to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Kishem Hashem nikra alecha v'yoru mimeka ze'elu tefillin shebarosh. Famous Maisa with the Gra. Some say the same Maisa with the Balatanya. Once was in an inn where the innkeeper was a terrible anti-Semite. He used to come in and beat the guests that spent, Jewish guests that spent the time in his inn. And he burst into the room where the Gra was, ready to wreak havoc on him. And the Vilna Gaon, wearing his tefillin, turned around and looked at him, and the person froze, apologized, and left. So the Gra's Mishamish said, "You tell me what, Kabbalah words you said that stopped this guy from beating you like he's beaten all the other people in this hotel." Vilna Gaon says very partial. I didn't say anything. Torah says, Kishem Hashem. When the Goyim will see V'ro, Kol Amei Ha'aretz, Kishem Hashem nikra alecha, v'yoru mimeka. V'le pachad. He saw my tefillin. So the Shammai said, it's not a good answer. There's a lot of people here who were beaten wearing their tefillin. He said, it doesn't say, Kishem Hashem nikra alecha, elu tefillin sha'al harosh. It says, elu tefillin shed v'rosh. When the tefillin are just on your head, maybe they don't have that effect. When the tefillin are in your head, then taka they have that effect, the yoru mimeka. So that's a tefillin shebarosh that show that tremendous kesher that we have with the Rebbeinu Shalom. The tefillin shel yad, Ksav Sofer says, why do we wear our tefillin on yad keya, on the weak hand, left hand, whichever hand is weaker? He says because a person has to work with his right hand. You have to leave that free to work. People work in this world. But we want to leave the hand to work, but at the same time that you're working, you know that you're mechuber to the Rebbeinu Shalom. A person who works for a living, says Ksav Sofer, and the entire time he's working, he has one machshava. I'm doing this in order to earn an honest living, in order to support my family, to be able to raise a Torah family, to be able to learn Torah, then all the time he's working is considered like Torah. It says, Torah Hashem Tefilah, that tefillin is considered like learning Torah. Wearing tefillin is like Talmud Torah. It says Ksav Sofer, that's why. Because when a person works with that intention in mind, all of his work is a hechsher mitzvah. It's a preparation for learning Torah. And his working is considered like Talmud Torah. He says, the Ksav Sofer says, that's why Laila and Shabbos and Yontif is Lav's Man Tefillin. That's only when you have no choice, you have to work. But if you don't have to work, Shabbos, Yontif, Laila, so then you have to sit and learn. You can't be Yotzei with Tefillin. Then you have to learn. But whenever it's impossible because you have to work and make a living, and your intention is you're doing it all connected to Torah, so then you're learning, you're wearing tefillin, you're working, is mamish like learning. That's what tefillin represents. Your entire intellect, all your senses are tied to the Rebbeinu Shalom. And the Dalit Parshias of tefillin, Kadesh represents the tachlis of life, Kedushah. What's Kedushah? Kedushah is not separating yourself from the world. There's a shiver of gifters atzal. Kedoshim tiyu, you have to be kodesh, ki kodesh ani Hashem Elokeichem, just like the Rebbeinu Shalom is kodesh. The Rebbeinu Shalom does not separate himself from anything in this world, because the world couldn't exist if he's not connected to it. So the entire existence of the world is because the Rebbeinu Shalom is connected to the world. So Kedusha doesn't mean separating yourself from the world. But the Rebbeinu Shalom is mashpi on the world world's not mashpi on him. That's Kedusha. Kedusha is where you're connected to the world. But you use the world and elevate the world. Don't let the world pull you down. That's Kedusha. Kaddish Liko Bechor. That's why Kedoshim Tiyu is followed by two mitzvahs together. Kibbud Avoim and Shabbos. Ish, Ovi, V'imo, Tiro, V'yashabsosai, Tishmoru. That is the essence of Kedusha. Kibbud Avoim is appreciating this world. The yesod of Kibbud Avoim is appreciating life. Because it's not Hakoras Hatov for all the good things your parents did for you. Because it could be your parents didn't do anything for you except maybe abandoned you the day you were born, put you on the step of somebody else's house. Svarim say that like Kibbud Avoim it says Kadedes Odicha V'Simecha Kasher Tzivcha Hashem Elokecha this coming week Sedra. Why? To remind us where was the mitzvah of Kibbud Avoim given? In the Midbar. You normally think that you have to mechabed your parents because they give you food and clothing and shelter. In the Midbar, the parents didn't give that to their children. The Rebbeinu Shalom provided all those things. Parents didn't have to provide it. Okay, so parents provide education. They are the link in the chain of tradition. In the Midbar, you didn't need that either. Everybody learned from Moshe Rabbeinu. They didn't need a link in a chain of tradition. So they didn't get educated from their parents either. Okay, so at least parents do good things for their children. In the Midbar, what did the parents do for their children? Were cholte and kept in the Midbar for 40 years. So here are parents who didn't benefit their children anything physically, spiritually, and harmed them for 40 years. And there the Torah said, Kabedes Ovicha V'Simecha. Why? Because if your parents gave you nothing, they gave you the most important thing you have, life. If you appreciate life, appreciate your parents. And that's why the schar for Kibbud Avoim is long life. If you appreciate it, you get more of it. You don't appreciate it, why should the Rosh give you more of something you don't appreciate? So Kibbud Avoim is an appreciation of Olam Hazeh. That's what your parents gave you. They didn't give you Olam Haba, they gave you this world. Appreciate it. This world is a very important place. Don't separate yourself from it. At the same time, Eshabsosai Tishmoru. Understand what the purpose of this world is to prepare for Olam Haba. Shabbos is made Olam Haba. Those two things create Kedusha. Kibbud Avoim and Shabbos. Kibbud Avoim teaches you the importance of this world, and Shabbos teaches you the purpose of what that importance is. It's not an end in itself, it's a means to reach an end. Second parsha of Ahoya Kiviyacha is to remember the past, to remember Yitzias Mitzrayim. Shema is the present, and V'hoyim Shamoa is the future. What will be if you keep the Torah, what will be if you don't keep the Torah. And even if all these things have been diminished, Sefer Torah and Tefillah, get to Mezuzah in a few seconds, but one should not minimize the importance of them even in their diminished state. Because it's kedai to keep in practice even if you're not going to reach the highest potential you have. Chafetz Chaim says, some people say, if I can't daven with kavanah, what's the use of davening for? So he gives a marshal, really an anachronism today, but he said there was a city where all of the watches stopped at the same time. Something happened, all the watches stopped in the city. And there was no watchmaker to come and fix the watches for a year. A year later, a watchmaker was passing through, and everybody brought their watches to be fixed. He immediately divided them into two groups. Some watches, he said, I can't fix these. And some watches he kept to fix. They asked him, what's the difference between these and those? All the watches stopped for the same reason. He said the people who continued winding their watches for the entire year, even though they didn't work, they didn't rust. I'm able to fix them. The ones who, because the watches weren't working, stopped winding them, all the watches rusted, I can't do anything with them. So too says the Chafetz Chaim. Even if you can't daven with kavanah, but if you continue davening, you don't become rusty. Someday, maybe you'll get kavanah. There's hope. But if you stop davening completely because you can't daven with kavanah, and you become rusty, and then there's no hope at all. So Chaim was surprised when he realized that every morning when Reb Zisha joined the minyan for Shachris, he wore a talis but never wore tefillin. One morning after davening was over, Reb Chaim approached him. "Tell me, Reb Zisha," he said, "is there a reason why you don't put on tefillin?" "It's because I don't have tefillin," Reb Zisha matter-of-factly replied. "Did you know that the shul has extra pairs of tefillin that are available for anyone who needs to borrow them? You're welcome to use a pair that belongs to the shul." "I could never do that," protested Reb Zisha. "I know that tefillin are very expensive. I'd be too afraid that I'd ruin them." A few days later, Reb Chaim once again approached Reb Zisha, but this time it was before Shachris began, presenting him with a new pair of tefillin. Reb Chaim said, "These are for you. Now you don't have to worry about ruining someone else's pair." Reb Zisha was overwhelmed with gratitude at the generosity of the Gabbai, and his eyes filled with tears. "Do you want me to help you put them on?" offered Reb Chaim. "I don't need help," declared Reb Zisha. "I can put them on myself." Taking the tefillin in his hands, Reb Zisha proficiently wrapped the tefillin shalyad around his left arm and secured the tefillin shalosh on his head. Reb Chaim was astonished to see that Reb Zisha was able to don the tefillin flawlessly. "I see that you put them on like an expert. When was the last time them on?" "I haven't missed a single day in all these years. The only difference today is that now I have a real pair of tefillin to use." There are people that were most nefesh to be able to put on tefillin. My father and we 4 children, Rabbi Ezriel Tauber, reports what happened when he was a child during the Holocaust in Budapest. My father and we 4 children were hiding in a public bomb shelter that was originally intended for old people. Not a day went by that my father did not put on tefillin. He could only put them on in secret, lying down under the blanket of his cot. Sometimes he hid me under the blanket too and prayed with me in a whisper. One day while he was wearing his tefillin and praying in the shelter, muffled in his blanket, the Gestapo arrived. Someone had informed them about a young man who did suspicious things by his cot under his blanket. He might be a Jew. The 2 Gestapo men began searching the shelter. As they approached my father's cot, my aunt, who understood the danger we were in, hurriedly sat the children down on the cot. One of the Nazis came over and looked at me. Clearly, I looked suspicious to him. I sat there frozen with terror, knowing what would happen if they spotted my father hiding there. But a miracle happened. God's hand intervened, and the Gestapo men left the bomb shelter without investigating the peculiar lump under the blanket. We were saved from death. So that is tefillin. Mezuzah. The purpose of the Mezuzah is to be makir the Kedushah of a home. The whole Indian of Tznius is represented by a Mezuzah. What is Tznius? Tznius is wherever there is an inner Kedushah, and one could be distracted by the externals, we cover the externals and make a statement there's more here than meets the eye. Chazal say there are three places where tznius is extra important. One is by the Mishkan. When the Mishkan was finished, the Rebbeinu Shem said, Kan Yofa Tznius. And the Mishkan was covered with coverings like a bride, with a veil in the front and a train in the back. The idea being that the Iker Kedushah of the Mishkan was what was inside the Kinna, not the gold and the silver and the other ornaments of the outside. But you could be distracted by the outside, you cover it to make sure to know that it's the Iker is what's inside, not what's on the outside. The second place is Talmidei Chachamim. Torah says, Hashem Elokecha Tira L'Rabos Talmidei Chachamim. You have to have fear of a Talmid Chacham, respect like the Rebbeinu Shalom. It's very dangerous. Because if you direct that respect and that fear to the character, to the personality of the Talmid Chacham, it borders on Avodah Zarah. Elamai, what do you respect and fear? The Torah that Talmid Chacham represents, the Pnimius. So the Talmid Chacham has to be extra tzanua to distract attention from his chitzonius in order to make the statement, there's more here than meets the eye. What you have that pachad and yira is from the Pnimius, not from my chitzonius. The third place is women. Women in the world are looked upon as for their external milas. All the Miss Universe pageants and Miss America pageants and Miss Israel pageants. Therefore, it's important that a woman make a statement. The Iker is not what you can see. The Iker is the Pnimius. Women are the foundation of Kedushah Yisrael. Because it makes no difference who your father was. Father could have been Genghis Khan. But if your mother was a Posheti Yidne, you have a Nishmas Yisrael of Kedusha. And your father could be the biggest tzaddik in the world. If your mother was not Jewish, you're not Jewish. You don't have a Nishmas Kedusha. What is the Koveya? Who has a Neshama Kedusha? The mother. Up until recently, mothers were women. So women are the Yesod of Kedushas Yisrael. Women also have that Indian of tznius. That's why the Mezuzah is on the Pesach between the Rishus HaRabim and the Rishus HaYochid. The Mezuzah has to let you know what you leave in the Rishus HaYochid, that's sanua, that's private, and you don't bring it out into the Rishus HaRabim, and what you leave out in Rishus HaRabim and don't bring into your house, and what can cross the boundary, what you can take outside from the house, and what you can bring inside from the outside. That's why the Mezuzah has only two parashas. Shema is B'Loshen Yochid, and V'hoyim Shemo is B'Loshen Rabim. What remains B'Rishus HaYochid, and what can be brought to Rishus HaRabim, and vice versa. Mezuzah tells me there are boundaries and limits in the world, and that's why we write Shakai, Sh'omar Le'olam Odai. The Rebbeinu Shalom made limits and boundaries in this world, and that is the foundation of what tznius is, and that's the foundation of Mezuzah, to be mavchin what belongs in Rishus HaYochid and what belongs in Rishus HaRabim, and what can cross the threshold between the two. I always like to say it, I think it's important enough to say it again. What you should leave outside and what you can bring inside is not just determined by what is mutter and what's asr. Go through the Dalet Chelkei Shulchan Aruch, and you'll be very successful in knowing what not to bring in your house. It's not true. Before we left Mitzrayim, Kadosh Baruch Hu gave us a mitzvah to take gold and silver from the Egyptians, but He also gave us a mitzvah to take clothing from the Egyptians. And He told us what to do with it. Put it on your children. What kind of chinuch is that? 210 years, one of the zechuyos we had was not to wear Egyptian clothing. All of a sudden, the Rebbeinu tells us to put on Egyptian clothing, put it on your kids. But I think the reason was the following. The Rebbe Shalom wanted us to know that that Egyptian clothing was 100% kosher, glatt kosher clothing. Because otherwise you couldn't put it on your children in the midbar. It must have been sanua, it must have not been shatnez. Anything that could be wrong with clothing wasn't wrong with that clothing. And I want you therefore to put it on your children in the midbar. It's 100% kosher. But had you worn that same clothing 210 years in Mitzrayim, it never would have gone out. How could it be? It's glatt kosher clothing. The answer is, in the midbar where there are no Mitzrim, the clothing has no implications. So you judge it on its essence. And essentially it's kosher clothing. But in Mitzrayim, you would have been wearing that clothing to be like a goy. And that's treif, even though the clothing itself is 100% kosher. And therefore, what is mutter and what is osir doesn't depend on the Dalet Chelkei Shulchan Aruch alone. But it depends in your place, in your time. What does that stand for? It's possible that Tanakh should become osir. When the Haskalah made Tanakh a substitute for Torah Shebaal Peh and a substitute for Torah itself, then the yeshivas stopped learning Tanakh. Tanakh became awesome because of what its implications were. I always like to give the example. When I first came to Eretz Yisrael, I brought my sukkah with me from Chutz La'aretz. It had nostalgic, still have that same sukkah now. It's a fiberglass sukkah that used to be around my screened-in pool in Miami. So it brought back nice memories. I didn't have a pool here. I still don't have a pool here. Except when I first came here, I used to have a pool in my living room in the winter when it rained. So it was nice to remember the good old days. So I brought my sukkah, but I felt a little guilty bringing a Chutz La'aretz sukkah to Eretz Yisrael. So I decided that I'm going to get rid of all my sukkah decorations from Chutz La'aretz and only use Israeli sukkah decorations. We came in Elul, and after Yom Kippur I went to Me'asharim to buy Israeli sukkah decorations. Get to Geula, and they have tables out in the street with all the decorations. And I say, you know, these sukkah decorations look very familiar. I get closer and closer, they're very familiar. They're Christmas decorations in the original packing. It says Merry Christmas on them. And all these Yerushalmis are buying these decorations like who knows what. I was sure that I would go into Me'asharim on Chol HaMoed and find a sukkah decorated with a little baby and some shepherds around or whatever. And they tell me it's a ganze mishpacha, except we can't find the father. In Yerushalayim, in those days at least, those sukkah decorations were 100% okay. They never saw a Christmas tree. I'm sure if they would go to America in December, they'd say these goyim stole our sukkah decorations. But in America, it has different implications. There, it could be taka osur. So what's osur and what's mutter is not totally in the Dalet Chelkei Shulchan Aruch. Simlos Mitzrayim can be glatt kosher in the desert. In Mitzrayim, it's glatt treif. The person has to be sensitive, and that's why you need Gedolim in every place to let you know what in that place is osir and what in that place is mutter. Whereas in other place, the same thing may be mutter or osir based on the implications it has in that place. Now when we say this Kinna, have in mind to be misabel for the miyut of Tashmishe Kedushah. Because we don't have a mikdash, and to be hope and be makaveh that those things will be strengthened when the Beis HaMikdash will be built and the full Kedusha of all Tashmishe Kedusha will come back in its full force.